I'm out of town at the moment, and I brought with me my generic recording setup to the hotel, so I can bring you guys a few extra stories until I come back. So if you can hear long-haul truckers in the background, that's the highway we're staying next to. And if the recording quality is a huge step down, there's nothing I can do about it for now. So with that, let's dive in and see what happens when you stumble upon a terrifying real-life cult. By the way, let me know in the comments what your creepiest experience has been in a church or with someone who was a little bit too religious. Also, when I do come back, I'll be doing creepy confessions from security guards, so be sure to send me your stories on that topic at darknessprevails.org. The Man in a White Suit by Alice Q. This encounter happened to me just a few days ago as of writing this. Let me give you a bit of background. I'm 20 years old, and I'm a Minnesota native, and I'm also female. This story involves 4 of my closest friends and I, all of which have had their names changed to protect their anonymity. My best friend Kaylee moved to Nebraska to be with her boyfriend Tommy about 2.5 years ago, and they come up several times a year to hang out with me and a few of our other friends, Amanda and Jane to be specific. This particular trip, Kaylee and Tommy came up to visit her on the 4th of July, to visit on Kaylee's birthday. We had been planning this trip for months and had a pretty full agenda, but the bulk of what we were going to do would be camping. Being that we are all pretty outdoorsy people, we have been our whole lives growing up, except for Tommy. We had planned to meet up in Anoka, which is northeast of the Twin Cities, and spend the night there before starting our trip, being that Jane and Amanda both still live there. Everything goes off without a hitch. Kaylee and Tommy make it up on time, and we all have a great first day together. The morning of day 2 comes around, and we're planning to go to a small resort in Mora, where Amanda's parents have a cabin. And then after that, we plan to make the last leg from Mora to Osaki's. We all swim, take the boat out, and have an amazing time, completely unaware of what the evening would have in store for us. We have dinner later, say our goodbyes around 9:45 p.m., just as the sun is starting to dip down below the horizon. Kaylee, Tommy, and I all pile into Kaylee's Ford Explorer, affectionately named Copper Shot, and Amanda and Jane pile into the car behind us. This is where the nightmare begins. After 2.5 hours of following Google Maps without any trouble, our navigation suddenly goes haywire. It's sending us down back roads, dirt paths, and unmarked trails. Literally anything but an actual road. The only one of us familiar with the area was Kaylee, but she was used to taking the main highways, something we avoided because of the holiday traffic. We're coming up on 3 hours of nonsense directions, and our frustration and fear is starting to reach its boiling point. Kaylee is directed down another unmarked dirt path that has a very large "Do Not Enter" construction sign on it, though there is no obstruction to indicate why. This is when we're directed down yet another unmarked path, one that appears to be someone's driveway. We do as we're told, hoping to find some place to pull off of and construct a plan to get out of this mess. As we pull up the driveway, the air in the car thickens, and despite high humidity and 90-degree summer night, I get goosebumps and a chill overcomes me. I'm visibly shaken as Kaylee looks at me, sharing that same feeling of uneasiness. But the drive is much too small to turn around. Not to mention, there would be no way to indicate to Amanda, still in her car behind us, that she was planning to do so. We reach the end of the drive, and finally, we have a clear view of what we're being brought into. A very old, very decrepit looking church. Its weathered white boards and wrought iron metal had seen better times, and in the darkness of the night, they illuminated our headlights and gave off a vibe that said, "Turn around now." Before I could even open my mouth to say anything, Kaylee's car engine began to whine and shudder. Her 4x4 was putting on the miles, and they had actually planned to replace it before coming up, but timing just didn't work out to do so. So amid the car's protesting, we heard a very loud, very audible thump noise. All of us made eye contact, assuming she must have hit a small animal. Tommy exited the car and made a circle around it, checking for any potential victims on the ground. At this point, we're maybe about 50 yards from the church's double-door entrance, the front of the building lit only by Kaylee's high beams. Tommy circles back around to the front of the car to check the grill, when he stops to listen. His complexion, normally a lovely middle American tan, fades to white as all of the color drains from his face. He goes over to the driver's side and frantically knocks on Kaylee's window, a sense of absolute panic coming over him. He half yells and half cries into the car. "There's music coming from the church," he says as he grips the lip of the glass, the window nearly breaking in his grasp. It was almost as if everything had stopped. Bugs, birds, bats, no sound was coming from outside, all except for the music from the church. I stared out the window at the empty building for what felt like hours. There were no lights on, no candles lit. The building should very well be empty, if not completely abandoned. But the sound poured out from the church, almost as if to intimidate us or invite us. Tommy jumped back into the car, and Kaylee made the risky move of turning around on the narrow path, surely getting us stuck if we didn't make the maneuver. As she whipped her poor 4x4 around, its whines only slightly audible above the music playing, I never broke my gaze from those doors. Something deep in my gut knew that something or someone was going to burst out of them at any moment. Kaylee whipped that poor car around, and Amanda followed behind. Tommy got out to speak with Jane on the passenger side of Amanda's car when it finally happened. At this point, the music was nearly deafening, and through the dark and haze of the evening I saw it, the doors slowly and deliberately opening. It was happening so slowly, I wasn't entirely sure anything was going to happen at all, until they suddenly slammed open. The thwack noise of the metal handle hitting the aging wood so loud, Kelly and I heard it from within our cars. Tommy was walking back to our car. I could feel sweat dripping from my face, beating down anxiously. I managed to choke out a whisper. "Guys, we should go now." Tommy got back in the car and saw the expression on my face, but I refused to break eye contact with the figure standing in the now open doorway. A man, around 6'3", was standing there, wearing an all-white suit, a white coat-tail jacket, white vest, white pants, white shirt, shoes, hat, and what I assumed was some form of melee weapon perched in his hands. His face was obscured by the shadows of the night, but I could just feel his eyes locked on us with a certain type of hatred. At first, he walked slowly, with intent, never looking anywhere but right at us. I felt my entire body begin to shake, and I could see the horror form on Amanda and Jane's faces as they saw him approach in the rear-view mirror. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was sit in silence. I realized amid all of my terror that something was wrong. The music, it was still playing, meaning that there were more of them. He was very much not alone. His slow, deliberate pace turned into a full sprint with no notice, and at last, the scream in my throat escaped as he was a mere 15 feet from Amanda's car. Kaylee stepped on the gas, and Coppershot whined under the suddenly changing conditions. That cliché horror movie moment felt like it was going to last forever, but fortunately, just as he approached Amanda's back window, Kaylee's car threw itself into gear and sped down the drive, nearly hitting the dense tree line. We cleared about 2 miles in 2 minutes, my heart pounding every second of the way. From what I could tell, he followed us in chase for about 500 feet, then stopped. But from what I could tell, he didn't turn back around. Not for as long as we could see him. We eventually pulled off to the side and flagged down Amanda, who was going almost double what we were in speed. We all got out of the car and stood in silence. Tommy was the first to speak up, but before he could utter a single word, Kaylee cut him off, still very shaken from the whole ordeal. We eventually figured out a plan to get back home, and though it was a lot of backtracking, we did eventually make it to Osaki's. When we arrived at the campground 3 hours later than planned, all of our friends were worried sick, but none of us really wanted to, or even really could speak of what had just happened. Amanda finally spoke up and said that we had just gotten turned around. Soon we all set up for the night and went to bed, not speaking about it again. The next morning was fairly uneventful, and the entire day passed without us speaking of the incident. We had originally planned to go to a small family-owned amusement park up near Osaki's in the evening, and we followed through with the plan. We all piled into the car and made our way there, again, without any issue. We purchased our tickets for go-karts, and mini-golf and the like, all the fun theme park activities one does. As we finished up our game of mini-golf, I had to use the restroom, and so I left the others behind as I went into the main building to use the bathroom. As I waited in line for my turn to use the single-stalled bathroom, I overheard 2 of the employees of the park talking to one another, and the topic piqued my interest. The 2 young ladies were speaking of some cult activity that had been reported in the local area, and that the officer who helped do security in the park had mentioned it to her, saying that they think this group was doing human sacrifices. Immediately, the previous night popped into my mind, and I began to shake all over again. I continued to eavesdrop the 2 girls, and that's when my heart stopped. The first girl mentioned that this group had been sighted only a few times, but every time they were seen, they were wearing the same thing, all white dress robes. I felt my stomach sink. This only affirmed what we saw that night. I wanted to run up and ask the girls about the group, but before I could, Jane came into the building and pulled me aside, letting me know it was time to go. The entire situation was very eerie and made it incredibly hard to sleep, but the lingering thought was nothing more than scary until I confronted Kaylee about the situation on our drive home. Kaylee had agreed to drive me home back to the cities, and during the trip back down, I asked her what she thought about what we saw, though I hadn't mentioned what the girls had said yet. Kaylee said that in the Bible, it mentions that Lucifer will return to Earth wearing all white to exact vengeance, and that she felt like it was a bit too big of a coincidence that our attacker was wearing all white as well. After the reports of cult activity and the revelation, it was solidified for me. I don't know what that guy had in store for us, but I'm glad we got out in one piece. So, creepy cult leader in northern Minnesota, let's not meet again. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for this single story video. I'll be back soon with full videos as usual. Until then, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, this world is a strange one, so stay safe out there and stay creepy.